Good afternoon. My name is Ron Roberts. I'm the branch manager here at the Brooklyn branch of the Cleveland Public Library. And I'd like to welcome you to our panel discussion. And today I have with me Bishop Omar Medina and Samuel Noyola. And they are going to be our panelists as we discuss the immigrant experience for Hispanic, Latinos here in America. Now, sort of the basis of our discussion is going to stem from the book, The House on Mango Street, written by Sandra Cizernos, which deals with a young teenage girl and her experience in coming to America and what she and her family encountered. Now, all this is in conjunction with the Big Read, a grant which was provided to our partners at Art House. And at this point, I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of Art House, Lila Voss, who will introduce herself and just say hey to us.
Hi, I'm Lila and very happy to be here. And we're really thrilled that we're in partnership with the Brooklyn branch, Cleveland Public Library. This has been great. This is the second session that we're having in relationship to the Big Read program. So I will hand it over to Erica, our program director. She here? There she is.
Hello, I'm Erica Raby, the program director at Art House. And as Lila said, I'm excited to be a part of this and work with the Brooklyn branch Public Library and to share about the House on Mango Street.
Yeah, we, Art House applied to the NEA Big Read program. They liked our project and awarded us funding so that we could do different kinds of workshops in our Urban Bright Arts and Education programs, as well as our own workshops at our facility here on Denison, and to partner with various other agencies like Cleveland Public Library and other organizations as well. So we will be doing more programming with organizations such as the Comité Mexicano and Lake Erie Inc. And those will be happening in spring. We're working on having some partnerships with Baldwin Wallace University as well.
All right, thank you, Lila. All right, well, before we get started, I want to just share this short little video. So.
Can art save lives? That was the question I asked myself in my 20s.
Out and now let again go to Zoom. And please share.
There.
There we go.
No, right here.
Oh,
Please.
all right, let's try that again.
Now, the latest addition to the NewsHour bookshelf.
Can art save lives? That was the question I asked myself in my 20s. I was working in a school where I had to bring my own chalk. And I thought, well, why am I teaching my students poetry and fiction? And how's that going to save my students from the beatings that life gives them? So I wrote about the things they told me, and that was my first novel. And it certainly has allowed many, many young people to finally see themselves in a book where they're loved, where they're not despised or criminalized. If you don't see yourself reflected in the story, you can't imagine you can make any difference in the world. Art does change us for the better.
All right. So I just wanted to give that sort of the introduction, and speaking of introductions, let me give a little background on our two panelists who are with us.
Now, the latest addition to the NewsHour bookshelf, Reflections on a Lifelong Search to Belong. Writer Sandra Cisneros chronicles her pursuit in A House of My Own, Stories from My Life. She sat down.
All right. Now, to my immediate right, we have Bishop Medina, as I had previously mentioned, who was born in Puerto Rico and has been living in Cleveland, Ohio since the age of 8. He has been an ordained minister since 1997 and has over 20 years of experience in the ministry, as well in the social service / social justice arena, working for organizations such as Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, and the Anti-Defamation League, just to name a few. Bishop Medina was a recipient of the prestigious Kaleidoscope Magazine 40/40 Award, and he is currently serving in the board of directors of CEOGC, and has also served as a member of the Cleveland Transformation Alliance Board of Directors, Hispanic Village Steering Committee, and Cleveland Advisory Board for Ashland Theological Seminary. He has worked tirelessly to help build bridges between different ethnic groups in the city and has worked in collaboration with organizations such as United Pastors in Mission and the Jewish Federation to tackle issues that affect our respective communities. So just a little snapshot of Bishop Medina. And then to his right, we have Samuel Noyola, who came to the United States 10 years ago. He is a first-generation high school and college student. While pursuing his education degree, he studied accounting and finance and had the opportunity to get involved in the financial planning and wealth management industry in a top 10 internship in the entire United States. After graduating from college, he decided to start his own business in the financial and wealth management industry, where he educates, helps, and create strategies for businesses and individuals with the goal of creating generational wealth. So just a little snapshot of both of them. And so I just wanted this to be sort of a conversation, and we got some questions that we're going to talk about. And once again, they're within the context of the House of Mango Street. So just to start off, the House of Mango Street reflects the main character and her family's experience in coming to America. What are your thoughts and experience on the transition to America? What have been the challenges and rewards you're faced? So I'll throw that out to Sammy and see.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about the experience, that transition?
That transition is very difficult. Not so many people get used to that fast.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to God, I got the privilege. But coming from a background that none of my family graduated from high school, went to college, transitioning from the aspect of language, not getting a good job, me being the oldest in the family, making sure I also provide financially at the same time, having the opportunity of getting to this country, the education, the opportunities that you get, you have to take advantage of those things, but that comes with effort and discipline. Why? Because during that transition, you can experience, well, financial problems. You're going to experience rejection. You're going to experience having difficulties trying to graduate from high school and move to college. You're going to have experience with your family that now is separate in different places. So now you have to focus on different places in the aspect of financially as well, not only on the nuclear family of your home. That opportunity that you get based on the discipline and habits that you can build, it can help you out take that opportunity now to the next level, but at the same time, we're fighting those challenges. And by you putting the effort and the discipline, well, it can take you to, hey, like myself, thanks to God being the first one in the family graduated from high school, going to college and putting yourself in a position that all the sacrifice that your family had made will be in vain. And that's basically some of the things that I face and some of the sacrifice that you need to do as an immigrant to make sure you get to the next level.
Well, I would have to agree with my fellow panelists that the transition is definitely a very difficult process. I believe it varies in the level of difficulty for each individual. But I can speak about my own experience coming from the island of Puerto Rico into the mainland in Ohio as a child. When I came here to Ohio, I was only 8 years old. I did not speak any English at all. And besides not speaking the language, I also had a severe speech impediment. I would actually stutter after every single word. And my first experience coming to Ohio was unfortunately not a pleasant one. I was a student, and when I came to Ohio, I was in 3rd grade. My 3rd grade teacher at the time, for some reason, she did not like me. And she would have me get up in front of the class and read from the book, knowing that I did not know any English and knowing that I had a severe speech impediment. And she would actually laugh at me in front of the class, and the entire class would laugh at me. And she would tell me things like, I don't know why your parents are wasting their time sending you to school. You are a dummy. You're never going to be anything in life. No one is ever going to hear anything that you have to say. And that created in me, of course, a sense of fear to get up in front of public and speak and so forth. So thankfully, because I had a very supportive family, my parents have always been very supportive, as well as the church at the time, my pastor, and the school principal. That was very helpful. At the time, I was able to actually go to speech therapy, overcome that speech impediment in my life. I began to do a lot of public speaking in my own church to gain my confidence back as a child. And that experience can break or make someone, but I was blessed that that experience actually turned out to work in my favor, because I made it my life mission to prove that teacher wrong. So I pushed myself. I graduated from high school. I went to seminary school, and now, contrary to what she told me, I actually do a lot of public speaking as a living. And the problem is not that I don't do any public speaking. The problem is to get me to be quiet. So that was kind of my experience transitioning from Puerto Rico here. I experienced that in my life.
Wow, that's good stuff. And actually, as you're talking, I was thinking the whole issue of the challenges and, to have to deal with sort of overt, something overtly that's racist in that manner. And I'm just curious for each of you, what was the dynamic for other Hispanic Latinos in your educational setting? Did you have any fellow Hispanic Latino students where you were, and were you able to form any sort of bond, or where you supported one another? Or very few? How was that?
So in my case, during that transition, I came to the United States when I was 16, no English, only my nuclear family that I know, starting this high school, and just coming in, me thinking, well, hopefully there's some people that speak Spanish. Otherwise, I don't know. I only know how to say house and dog, So I was basically happy that I got to the classroom. I wasn't the only family that just came in that year, to the United States. There was a few, like 4 or 5 families that I can remember, a few other students that we usually just sit next to each other. That way we can figure out, hey, whoever know more English can translate to the other one until we figure it out, you know?
All right.
So that support, you know, help you understand that you are not the only one in that situation.
Okay.
And it put you in that position that, okay, now that you are not the only one in that situation, you can figure out what you guys have in common to get those struggles out of the way. You know?
Wow. That's good. That's good.
But in my case, I was blessed. I was raised pretty much on the west side of Cleveland. So there's always been a large Latino population here. So I was able to, always have a nucleus of students that spoke the language. We became lifelong friends. I actually am still good friends with some of the students that were with me to school, and some of them shared the same struggles, similar struggles that I did. So we banded together, and that's the beauty of living in a city such as Cleveland, that you have a diversity of cultures and beliefs, but when it comes down to it, we all put our differences aside most of the time, and we come together as one.
That's good. Okay. Well, now, I want to pull a little something from the book. On page 28 is one of the vignettes is called Those Who Don't. And I just want to read this and then get you all to give me some feedback in terms of your experiences as it relates to what the author is sharing. Those who don't know any better come into our neighborhood scared. They think we're dangerous. They think we will attack them with shining eyes. They are stupid people who are lost and got here by mistake. But we aren't afraid. We know the guy with the crooked eye is Davy, the baby's brother, and the tall one next to him in the straw brim, that's Rosie Eddie B. And the big one that looks like a dumb grown man, he's Fat Boy, though he's not fat anymore, nor a boy. All brown, all around, we are safe. But watch us drive into a neighborhood of another color, and our knees go shakety shake, and our car windows get rolled up tight, and our eyes look straight. Yeah, that is how it goes and goes. So, as you think about the whole issue of race and how prejudice impacts people as they come into the community that you stay or when you venture out, what have been your experience with dealing with prejudice?
It's one story that comes to my mind as you're reading this is my mom. Me growing up, my mom never got the opportunity to go to high school or college. She had to start cleaning houses of wealthy people. And some of those days I used to go with my mom. And that come to my mind because I saw several times how they didn't treat my mom the right way. They didn't respect my mom, in the aspect of giving her the money, leaving it in the face, telling her things that she didn't do, and all those things, thanks to God, just like he was saying earlier, shaped me as a person of, I have to change. I'm the oldest in my family. All of the sacrifice my mom had made, I had to make sure I'm not in vain. And some of those things, just like he mentioned in his story, it can put you in a position that you get depression, or it can put you in that position of, hey, I need to make sure I get it done. And though that story of my mom, it just helped me out so much to say to myself, hey, I have to continue to push. I have to continue to get better. Because in reality, one way or another, you always gonna find one of those people. Yeah. You just have to prove them wrong. And by putting that effort and the opportunity, now I can say to my mom, hey, you don't have to worry. because I got you, you know? Okay. So that's basically the story that comes to my mind as you're reading these, because in reality, we're gonna experience that as an immigrant one way or another. Just you have two paths. You're gonna listen to it, or you're gonna prove them wrong. You know? So that's basically a little bit about my story, my story by you reading that aspect of the book.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
That is definitely something that I can relate to. I think my entire family can relate to. One of the key things you hit was education. The work that the Cleveland Public Library does and Art House is incredibly important because racism and prejudice is something that most of it stems from lack of education. No one is born racist. Racism is something that you learn on the household, the people who are around you, and that the lens that they view life is shaped by their own experiences and lack of knowledge about other people. So the more that we educate ourselves and we educate folks, I think that helps to reduce prejudice. I mean, it's always going to be there, but it helps to reduce it as we continue to understand each other more. For example, let me tell you, like, my experience has been that up to this day, I still have people that walk up to me and say, why don't you go back to your own country? Because my accent, even though I'm from Puerto Rico, my accent is not your typical Puerto Rican accent. Don't ask me how the heck I got it. Nobody knows where I'm from. I got like this, exotic accent that nobody knows where I'm from. But I'm actually from Puerto Rico. But a lot of people till this day, it's amazing that over 100 years since, a lot of people still don't know that Puerto Rico is part of the US. So up to this day, they tell me, do you have a green card? Do you have a visa? My response to them, I do it as an educational experience too, but my response to them is, yes, I do have a visa and a MasterCard as well. And I have a green card that's called American Express, and I have a green card, in my, Uno pack and stuff like that. So, because it's amazing to me that people till this day, a lot of people still do not know that Puerto Rico is part of the US, and by being born in Puerto Rico, despite of my accent, I'm still a US citizen, and I don't need a visa, and I don't need a green card. But those are the type of things where education plays a vital role, because as people get more educated, I believe they will change. And when they say go back to my country, I say, I am in my country. This is my country. So these are the type of things where I think it takes all of us doing the collaborative work that we do to help change some of that mindset.
Well, it's what, Corey, I don't know, you must have been reading my mind, because you're saying what you said, especially about the language, is sort of a segue to my next question. How is language used to divide and include? What does the language you speak suggest about your connection or disconnection to your culture? So you definitely have alluded to how the perception. So I'm gonna give you a chance to weigh in on that piece.
So my family is from the Dominican Republic. So the Dominican Republic is an independent country. It's not part of the United States. So you have to go through that process of visa, green card, and all those things. So in our case, the aspect of language is basically not that much as an issue, because remember that all Hispanic countries they speak Spanish.
Okay.
So in that aspect, everyone is going to be the same. So there's no different about the Dominican Republic or Mexico or Colombia, Honduras, in that aspect, because everyone is in the same country, right? But in the aspect of the process to get that family to build wealth or get that opportunity is different ways. For example, Dominicans from Dominican people from the Dominican Republic, they basically illegal. They go in a boat to Puerto Rico, and that's how my mom.
Wow.
That's how my mom got basically for me to be a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
My mom spent 3 days in the ocean. Millions and millions of people died doing it. She survived. And now that I was born in U.S. territory, made my mom stay at Puerto Rico, that is part of the United States, because I was born.
Right.
Yes. You know, so every country has their
Yeah.
different basically perspective of how to basically get into the land, right?
Mhm.
In our country, Dominican Republic, is like, well, we have to make sure we go to the nearest island that is part of the United States that can give us the ability, all right, to go through the process of green card and citizenship.
Mhm.
That way we can basically say that we are from the mainland. And that's basically some of the difference, depending on what country you are as Hispanic.
Right.
Because every Hispanic speaks Spanish,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
even though the accent is different from one country to another. But in the aspect of how to get to the next level and get the opportunity, there's where the difference get together. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just a quick aside. Did you notice when you two met in terms of talking earlier, the nuances of how he spoke versus, and could you identify to some degree where he was
Yeah.
from?
When he speaks Spanish, I can identify where he's from, you know. So that's the beauty about what I mean about the language, you know.
Okay.
Everyone speaks Spanish one way or another, but that accent that we have, you know, it gives you a clue of where you come from. Puerto Rico, Colombia, Peru, Mexico. So that's super nice, yeah.
No, I'm curious to what degree, because especially you mentioned this earlier. How has the pressure or the weight of being the oldest and feeling like you, in a sense, have to carry the torch for your family and for your people, so to
Mhm.
speak? How has that affected you versus, say, maybe some of your other peers the same age who, had to, in a sense, embody that same type of mentality? How have you dealt with it, and what have you seen with others?
Patience.
Okay.
That's the word that defines. Understanding that you have to support your family. You are the one that is going to get them to the next level. Understanding that you have to put the work. Understanding that you have to put the effort, but nothing comes back.
Mhm.
Understanding that aspect of patience helped me out a lot, even though I have all that pressure.
Mhm.
By me putting the work, now I understand that this is not the year, it's probably gonna be next year.
Mhm.
This is not gonna be the year, it's probably gonna be next year.
Okay.
And putting yourself in a patient mode, but at the same time putting the work, it can prevent you basically from just quitting yourself because you are not seeing results sometimes, you know? And that's the difference. When you don't have that workload or all these storage, right? Like I have,
Mhm.
sometimes you don't get some goals, you don't achieve some goals, you just lay back, right? But at the same time, you don't having the option because you are the only one. You have to say to yourself, hey, you don't have the option, you just have to be patient because it's gonna come.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's basically one of the things that helped me out a lot during this process. It's like, hey, don't worry, it's gonna come. You just have to put the effort, even though that you have to do way more than other people, right?
Mhm.
But that effort is gonna pay off one way or another.
How about you? What's your thoughts?
Okay, can you repeat the question again?
Well, just in terms of sort of having to carry the weight of
Yes.
being the one or the representative, because I'm sure you probably have found yourself, whether as a family member who's striving for something that nobody else has done, or even being in a circumstance where you're the only Hispanic Latino and you kind of feel the weight and pressure. Because I'm sure, even in religious circles, you probably have been in situations where you have to be the one to represent. So how has it handled carrying that weight? And
Well, in my case, as you know, I was consecrated as the first Hispanic interdenominational bishop in the state of Ohio. So I was consecrated in October 2019. It was a huge challenge because it had never been done before. And then you add the pressures of 2020, 2021, and all the circumstances that our office have had to deal with. So we serve as the liaison between the Latino faith-based community, both the state and federal governments and nonprofit sector and other institutions. So there's definitely a lot of pressure that comes with that. I am called upon to do a lot of press, conferences, press releases, show up to a whole bunch of different meetings. So there's a lot of pressure. Number one, there's a lot of pressure of since it hasn't been done before. Most people love me, but you always have, some people in that would love nothing but to see you fail. So there's always that pressure of being the best you are at what you do, not only to prove it to yourself and not to prove it to others, but it's because it's the right thing to do. So I think that mindset of being aware of why you do things, if you are aware that everything that you do should be done with excellence, because you're doing it for the service of others, it helps you to stay afloat. Whenever you want to give up in life, you need to remind yourself, it's not about me. My decision will have an impact on a whole bunch of other lives. So when we realize that it's not about ourselves, but that our decisions have consequences, and you do things with excellence because you're doing it for them, and you're doing it to provide the best service possible, I think you will always put your best foot forward. In my case, faith always plays a major part in everything that I do, beyond the circumstances that I see. But we were talking about that before the panel discussion started, a balanced faith, not this blind faith, well, I'm going to let this higher power do everything for me. He gives you the wisdom, the tools, the resources, but you have to put your efforts through and sacrifice and put your best foot forward always.
Okay. Well, we're kind of getting to the end of our time, and I want to move to this question, but one of my concerns, particularly as it relates to African American youth, is I sometimes wonder if the lack of struggle that I think our generation had to deal with has made them less, just like motivated or less focused on striving forward. And so I see some unwillingness on their part to maybe push the way that we may have had to because of the barriers and challenges. So going forward, what would be your encouragement to a young person who you think may not really grasp the significance of education and really working hard and appreciating their culture the way that you think? What would be your advice to them?
So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I see that a lot, especially in my industry, in my business, And one of the things that I can say is that everyone had the potential. But at the same time, when you are financially comfortable, you don't see the other side of what you can get in the aspect of opportunities.
Okay.
So what I mean, let's break it down. So if we are inside a family that our mom and dad work, we are teenagers, 17 years old, going to high school, but we can wear those Jordans whenever we want, and our parents are gonna give us to us. We know that when we get to the house, there's food in the table, and we don't have to do anything. We just eat, and at the same time, we have the PlayStation 5 that we can bring our friends in.
Yeah.
We feel comfortable.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest mistakes,
Mhm.
because when you feel comfortable at a young age, and you have experienced all these challenges that we have faced, you think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Now feeling comfortable, now you see yourself, well, I can get my high school diploma and go to college, but I don't have to put a lot of effort because I already have everything. I already have 5 or 6 Jordans in my house that I can go out, you know? And that financial stability sometimes, it put you into, hey, not seeing that all the things that you can do and you can bring to the table, to the family, so you can take it into the next level. You know? So finding some role models that have experienced those struggles, finding a mentor that it can always basically put you in a position of learning or getting something new. That way you can understand that even though I got those 5 Jordans and I got a Gucci belt on, I'm not financially comfortable.
Right.
You know? And it can get you into, hey, I have more things to do. Look at the effort, look at what it takes. You know, Jordan didn't become the best player just because it was Jordan.
Yeah.
It was the effort for it, you know? So that's what happened a lot in our community as African Latinos. We're financially comfortable because our parents already went through those struggles.
Right.
Now they're financially stable. Now we can get all the benefits based on the sacrifice that they got.
Right.
And now basically we put ourselves in a position of, okay, we're good. You know, we just have to build that same way instead of just making sure all the sacrifice that your parents made, probably they give up the aspect of creating retirement accounts and a good retirement plan. The aspect of giving you money for your education.
Yeah.
So now you, as that young, basically adult, have to put those efforts, that way you can make sure all those sacrifice that your family made will be in vain. But the only way to know that you need to do that is by finding those role models.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
good. You know, and as a parent, I can echo that whole thing that you compromise and sacrifice for your kid. And so what I could have been putting that 401k or that 403b.
Yeah, you got it.
I haven't, because I want to get them Jordan.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, sorry, that was my little side.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree. With this conversation, because you know when you understand the struggle, we try to protect and shelter our kids from having to go through the same situation. So many times we make a mistake of just giving them everything so they can feel safe, so they can feel secure. And there's nothing wrong with providing the best you can for your children, but there's nothing more rewarding than you working for your own stuff as well. People can give you all kinds of stuff, but when you have to go out and work and sacrifice and learn the value of stuff, because I don't think we understand the value of stuff until we actually work for it. But one of the things that I really want to point out to the youth, especially Latino youth or youth from other countries as well, is be proud of your culture, of your heritage. Don't make this mistake of trying to fit in and allowing people to put you in a mold, and where you lose your sense of where you're from. Because one of the mistakes that I see happening, especially with second and third generation, Latino youth here is that more and more of them do not speak Spanish. They are Latinos,
Mhm.
but because they were born and raised here, and English is not, Spanish is not spoken in the home, then they lose their language. And that's a big mistake because the more languages that you know, the more valuable that you're going to be to any company if you speak more languages. And it's always better, I say, even if you have an accent, even if some people make fun of you because of your accent, your response should be, at least I'm able to speak more with my accent than you speak my language with no accent. So always be proud of who you are, of your heritage, of your culture. Keep the language alive because it's going to open so many more doors for you.
Mhm.
So always keep in tune with that. Never forget where you came from.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Because I think it's, to your both your points, I think there is that aspect of losing sight of what others have done to pave the way for where you are. And you know, and even as I've read different vignettes from the book, and even what the author talked about in the little clip we showed earlier, I think it's really the author's attempt to try to help those of her culture and just young people in general to understand that in the midst of challenges and struggles that they can see themselves reflected and that there's hope and they can aspire to something greater. So I thank you both. You all open up some fertile ground for a whole lot more, but we need to bring this to a close right now. But before we close, I want to thank you both. But also, Lila, did you have anything you wanted to add or say at this point? You or Erica, before we close out? I'm sorry, you're muted.
Hang on a sec. I had posed a question which is related to what you were talking about in terms of language. So hang on a sec so I can.
Okay. Did you put it in the chat?
I had to find it. I had to find my
okay.
question.
Okay.
So I wrote it to you yesterday, but it wasn't until yesterday evening that I had a chance to do it. Erica, did you have any questions that you have thought of? Here, I found it. Okay, this is what I posed. Latinx cultures share a common language, but culturally are quite diverse. Language and culture are fluid. They're living. They're organic in nature. They evolve. What is the part that literature plays in the dance between preservation and affecting change? I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Oh, could you repeat that?
Yeah.
I'm digesting all that myself.
I was like,
Latinx cultures share a common language, but are culturally quite diverse. Since languages and cultures they're living, they're fluid, they're organic in nature, they evolve in order to really stay relevant. They're not like a dead language like Latin. What is the part that literature plays in the dance between preservation and effecting change? Because change is inevitable.
That's a big question.
That's deep.
Wow.
I mean, I would have to say that literature plays a major part because the more that you read, the more that your vocabulary will expand. And the more that you read, the more relevant you're able to stay with the times. So literature opens this whole world of comprehension, because as you were saying in the beginning of your question, Latinx, the Latinx generation, they have their own vocabulary, their own language. I don't understand some of the terminology that's used by the new millennials and Latinx generation. So I make a conscious effort of learning what their new terminology is, so I can stay hip in the circles and be relevant to the conversations that I speak to them as well. Part of the of how I do it is by reading stuff that is published by people that they look up to, that is written by people from their generation, which is different from the people that were growing up in my generation. So literature helps to bridge that gap, that generational gap that exists. Absolutely.
On my side, I completely agree with that. And at the same time, we add that having these type of conversations and having those type of books like The Street of Mango can put Latinx from different communities, just like you mentioned at the beginning, Colombian, Mexican, Peru, Dominican Republic, even though different basically cultures, put them on the same story as something that does, even though that everyone is different, something that everyone goes through. And that's what happened on that Street of Mango, right? So even though basically there was Mexican, Dominicans go to that process as well, right? So having those type of literature books that can help us basically as young professionals, as parents, so we can actually relate that to our kids and make them understand, just based on the previous question that we talked about, make them understand, hey, this is where I am right now as your dad, but these are some of the issues that I face. Go read this book. Now the change is happening, but the change is happening in a good way, in the aspect of they're putting the effort of learning the background. That way they can implement those things into the future. No? And when I say into the future, their own way, of the future. Because like we were talking about in our previous question, well, instead of probably getting a normal phone, that future is going to be an iPhone 13 or something. Does that make sense? So, and that's how literature can put the past and the present together, by having someone in the middle and having those type of books in place that we can actually add into the overall performer, or the overall basically process of that young professional, that young adult reading it. That way they can get a better sense of the future and change that into their whole perspective.
Hey, Lila, your question made me think, because I deal with my teenager, and I'm sure they probably can echo this, that maybe the evolution that maybe we at this stage in our life have to deal with, especially when you mentioned the iPhone piece, is having to broaden our understanding of what literature is, because we can't just define it in terms of printed pages anymore, but because kids use technology and social media, finding ways of how we communicate those messages in ways that they understand, that they more readily may identify, because they may not as readily pick up a book and in more concrete way that we think of literature, but then in terms of the social media experience. So maybe that's part of our education is trying to figure out how we convey those messages that are in there in those ways, so that hopefully maybe it'll go full circle in terms of bringing them back to the printed page, or at least the ebook, which, by the way, the library does offer. But anyway.
Well, thank you. Erica, did you have some questions that you wanted to pose?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to tell, just say thank you for sharing your stories. Just as in the book, The House on Mango Street, there's so much that family, culture, community does in shaping who we are. So it's just wonderful to hear that from more people, just as I enjoyed reading it in the book, The House on Mango Street. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very, very much. This has been very special.
Well, once again, I want to thank you both. And once we're offline, we'll talk about having further discussions over a meal. But I appreciate it. Lila, if you want to join us, guys, I'll let you know when we decide to hang out, and if you want to tag along with us.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I certainly will if I can. Thank you. Let me know.
Sure. But I appreciate it. Thank you. And I will get the recording to you, and that way we can share it beyond our little intimate circle, so that others hopefully be a chance to appreciate it as well. So I thank you. So to those of you who are enjoying, who will see this, we appreciate your time, attendance, and we hope you will join us again as we go forward. Check out Art House Incorporated, and also come to Brooklyn Branch, Cleveland Public Library, so that we can share with you other things that are happening in conjunction with Art House and other things that the library is doing as well. Thank you and have a good day.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.